If you want to see more detailed images, videos, and the full article, check the link in the description. A wave of grief has once again swept through Yuendumu, a remote Aboriginal community in the Northern Territory, following the tragic death of 24-year-old Kumanjayi White. White, a Warlbri man with disabilities, passed away last month while in police custody at an Alice Springs supermarket after being restrained by officers. This heartbreaking event has reignited calls for justice and sparked widespread protests across the Northern Territory and beyond, culminating in rallies and vigils over the weekend. The outpouring of public emotion underscores a deep-seated sense of frustration and a growing crisis of confidence in the Northern Territory's criminal justice system. At the heart of this crisis lies the open letter penned by White's grandfather, respected Elder Ned Hargraves, who has directly appealed to Prime Minister Anthony Albanese for intervention. Hargraves' impassioned plea, released just ahead of planned protests in Sydney and Alice Springs, paints a stark picture of a system failing its most vulnerable citizens. He uses powerful language, declaring, "This madness must stop. You must step in now," a desperate cry for action reflecting the profound sense of despair within the community. The letter underscores a complete breakdown in trust between the Yuendumu community and the Northern Territory Police Force. This tragedy echoes the devastating events of 2019, when another Warlbri man, Kumanjayi White, was fatally shot by NT police officer Zachary Rolfe. Although Rolfe was later acquitted of murder, the inquest into Walker's death unveiled shocking allegations of systemic racism within the NT police, including evidence of racist mock awards and offensive text messages. The findings of that inquest, due next month, are anticipated with heavy hearts and a hope for much-needed accountability. Hargraves' letter cleverly links the current tragedy to the legacy of the 2007 Northern Territory Intervention, a controversial emergency response policy implemented with bipartisan support. He argues that the federal government's sweeping powers, enacted under the guise of addressing child sexual abuse, ultimately stripped Aboriginal communities of their rights, jobs, and assets. The intervention saw compulsory acquisition of Aboriginal-owned land, the abolition of permit systems controlling access to land, the introduction of income management, the deployment of the army to police communities, and the imposition of alcohol and pornography bans. Hargraves forcefully contends that the same federal government that wielded these extensive powers now possesses the authority to rectify the injustices suffered by his community. "Our communities were devastated and we have not recovered," Hargraves writes, underscoring the long-lasting trauma of the intervention. "Now we demand action from Canberra to see that our rights are restored." The family's demands are clear: an independent investigation into Kumanjayi White's death, the release of any available CCTV footage, and the immediate suspension of the officers involved pending the outcome of that investigation. These calls have so far been met with resistance, as the NT police and the territory government have repeatedly rejected calls for an external investigation. Adding further layers of sorrow to this already heartbreaking situation is the recent death of another Aboriginal elder in Darwin. This 68-year-old man, a respected figure from the remote community of Wadea, passed away in intensive care after being arrested by Australian Federal Police. Reportedly intoxicated and unable to board a flight, his death, the cause of which remains undetermined pending a post-mortem examination, adds another tragic layer to the ongoing crisis, highlighting the disproportionate impact on Indigenous Australians within the justice system. The elder was a vocal advocate for bilingual schooling and improved education funding for his community. His passing serves as a powerful reminder of the profound loss suffered by these communities. The silence from the Prime Minister's office, the Minister for Indigenous Australians, and the NT government in the face of these escalating tragedies is deafening. This lack of immediate response further fuels the sense of abandonment and injustice felt by grieving families and communities across the Northern Territory. The weight of these events hangs heavy, leaving many to question whether meaningful change will ever come. The urgency of the situation cannot be overstated. The demand for justice, for accountability, and for an end to this heartbreaking cycle of tragedy reverberates across the nation. For those struggling with the emotional weight of these events, support services are available. In Australia, Lifeline is available at 13 11 14, and Indigenous Australians can contact 13YRN at 1392 76. International helplines can be found at befrienders.org. The fight for justice continues, and the eyes of the nation, indeed the world, are watching. The future of Aboriginal communities in the Northern Territory hangs precariously in the balance, and the need for significant and immediate reform is undeniable. The collective grief and outrage demand a response, a commitment to genuine reconciliation, and a concrete plan to address the systemic issues that continue to disproportionately affect Indigenous Australians within the criminal justice system. The silence is deafening, and the call for action, for change, and for justice grows ever louder.